Hey, Sock Drawer family, it's Lisa. Listen, I want you to ask yourself, are you still searching? Do you feel lost? In what direction are you headed? Maybe it's because you don't trust the answer you know you already have. Just think about that for a second. Because a lot of people right now are reading more, learning more, trying to figure it all out, especially in today's climate. And we're still not moving forward. And that's what we're getting into today. In today's episode, I'm excited for it. You are going to not hear about surface level, find yourself advice. But the real question underneath it all, what is it? Are you actually growing? Or are you avoiding the decision you already know you need to make? How do you figure that out? And in this episode, we'll figure it out. We're talking about intuition, spirituality, inner knowing. But more importantly, we're going to break down what any of that really looks like in real life, how to recognize when you're stuck, how to stop searching and start moving. And you know what? How to finally trust yourself enough to take that step forward. Because if you've been waiting for clarity, guess what? Nobody's coming to give it to you. Have you not figured that out yet? This conversation might challenge you to realize you don't need more answers. You just need one honest decision. So stay tuned. Listen up.
I'd say pick the biggest situation that you're having a hard time with in your life and sit down with a pen and paper and ask yourself what it means to you. Let yourself journal about it. Because doing that is immediately transformative.
I can't think of anything better to suggest than exactly that.
Everyone has a sock drawer where we hide the stuff we don't want to face. Today, we're opening yours. I'm Lisa Begley, and this is the Sock Drawer Podcast. If your life feels messy, stuck, or outgrown, good. That's where we begin.
Hey there, Sock Drawer family. Welcome back. Let me ask you a question. What if the reason you keep searching is because you don't trust the answer you already have? Think about that. Welcome back to the Sock Drawer Podcast, where we open up parts of life most people avoid, and we find clarity in the middle of the mess. And that's where most of us find ourselves pretty frequently. Today's episode is brought to you by Project Icon, helping leaders, founders share their story, build their brand, and find their voice. Now, today I'm joined by Ahonu and Aingeal Rose, founders of World of Empowerment. They have spent over 20 years helping people explore intuition, spirituality, and personal awareness through their books, their courses, and their global teachings. But today, we're going to bring this into real life because my audience, you guys, you're not just looking for insight. I know, we know, you're looking for movement. Welcome to the Sock Drawer Podcast, Ahonu and Aingeal. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure. I am excited to have you and have this conversation. So if I could take you guys back a little bit, could you tell me a time before all of any of this, before you guys started, where things in your life didn't feel aligned that maybe led you to beginning this journey?
I know we both have different stories about that, so let's have
Well, let's hear them both. I want to hear them both.
Well, I experienced a few tragedies in my life early on. I was married when I was 19, and my husband was murdered 3 months later.
Oh my
So that was the
gosh.
first event that had me start asking questions. And I went to a lady who basically communicated with angels, and she said I could just come and ask whatever I wanted. I asked a lot of questions about where was he, what was he doing, why did this happen, all of that. Nobody could ever really figure out exactly what happened that night. But anyway, so that was the first thing that got me into consciousness and spirituality. And then as I grew along that, and I learned about manifesting, and I started teaching classes about manifesting. And I taught myself the tarot, and I taught classes on the tarot. And then I was with another partner some years later who ended up killing himself in front of me. So that was the second tragedy. And that was...
Gosh.
At that point, I was ready to just say, forget relationships entirely, okay?
I bet.
And then I went to another reader, because I worked in a metaphysical shop, and I did readings in there. And I went to a lady who was there, and she told me I was going to meet a man with salt and pepper hair, and we'd be friends at first, and then it would turn into something later. So at that point, I thought, who cares? I thought to myself, you know?
Yeah.
And sure enough, I was on a trip to Tenerife, a spiritual trip. and Ahonu was there, and we met each other. And the rest is history. We met each other again in Phoenix later on that year.
Okay, so it didn't start right away. You met first.
It didn't start right away.
Okay.
We met each other and then saw each other again in Phoenix in a group of like 350 people. And
Wow.
he just comes walking down the aisle in this meeting room and he just kisses me on the mouth, okay?
Oh my gosh.
I had to.
And I
Lisa,
thought to myself, who is this guy, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, it
I
kind
love
of went from there because we found out that we were very telepathic with each other.
Wonderful.
So, of course, he's from Ireland and he flew back to Ireland. And I lived in Chicago at the time. So he'd call me up and it was either 12 o'clock or 6 o'clock because there was a 6-hour time difference.
Yeah.
And that's the times we could only connect at 6s. Okay. So you can tell the rest.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of backstories behind all that, and
Yeah.
I'm very aware of being conscious of listeners and viewers. So the pertinent details about all of this, like in terms of your Sock Drawer podcast,
Yes.
what are the pertinent things that kind of got us really going down a particular path? Was Aingeal Rose had been telling me of her tragedies, like the first time her husband being murdered, and then a second guy shooting himself in the head in front of her. I was thinking to myself, how on earth can anybody possibly ever come to terms with something like that? Not once, but
Sure.
twice.
Yeah.
And here was I moping about my own issues. Now, my own issues were pretty serious as far as I was concerned at the time, because my first baby died.
They were serious.
And he died on my birthday. A couple of years had passed where every time on my birthday, I'm thinking, how on earth am I supposed to ever be happy again? How am I supposed to celebrate a birthday? Now, what was interesting about that, Lisa, was that being a man, I can understand when a woman would cry and shed tears and express those emotions. But for a man growing up in Holy Catholic Ireland, you just didn't do that. So all my emotions were all bottled up, and I did not know how to cope with grief and sadness and tragedy. And so what I started to do luckily was I started to write down, journal these things. And I had such a collection of journals and notes and feelings that I had compiled them all into a notebook, but didn't know what to do with it, and I put it in my attic. So the time came when, in seeking answers to why did he die, in the same way as Aingeal Rose was seeking answers, why did my partners die, and why me, and why this dumping of tragedy on top of my shoulders.
Yeah.
We went to this workshop. So here was I in Phoenix at this workshop, and I was early. Aingeal Rose's flight was a little bit later. So I went to a little mini workshop before the main workshop began, and it was about twin flames and soulmates, and I was really passing time. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what twin flames were. I had heard of soulmates, and I thought, oh, that's a couple who are married and they're happy and
Forever.
Everything's cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the extent of it as far as I knew. So in this workshop they taught about how twin flames were actually the first emanation from source. And that if you liken it to a clock face, you'd have a 12 at the top and a 6 on the bottom. So I'm thinking, okay, that makes sense. So you've 12, 6. And then I began to twig, hey, the only time Aingeal Rose and I were ever able to talk, for one reason or another, was this 6-hour time difference. It was either 12 o'clock my time or 6 o'clock her time or the other way around.
Yeah.
And I thought, is there something to this? Is there more to this? And I really began to open up to possibilities about twin flames and soulmates. Well, that was only the beginning. As soon as we met, we began, of course I kissed her. I felt compelled. I had no choice. I was absolutely compelled. I knew there was something to her, and it was a beautiful thing. It was a holy thing, actually. So much so that when we met and she said her name was Gail Ann, I said, no. Your mother almost got it right. It should be Aingeal, not Gail Ann. Why? Because Aingeal's the Irish for angel, and I perceived her as an angel. Yeah. So
Love that
he knows
story.
better now.
so we sat and we
No.
talked, and it started to turn out that there was not only this 12-6 coincidences, but there was also millions of other little coincidences. I'll tell you the main ones. It turns out she was born on... Now, I had known at that stage there was something angelic about 11/11, right? And lots of people all over the internet, they'll talk about seeing
Of course.
1111 and that it's angelic
Yeah.
numbers and so on, right? I was born on
Yeah.
211, which is 22. And I was born in house number 22. But immediately after that, these 1111s were coming all over the place. You know, we'd be on Route 11 at 11 miles an hour, 11 miles to our destination. You know, like it just was nonstop. And then they started
Yeah.
to grow 22, 22. We'd be in a 55 mile zone at 55 miles an hour, with, 55 miles to go. The numbers were just coming right, left, and center to us. And while there was confusion initially saying, what is this? And I know this part is pertinent to your audience because coming out of confusion, we were beginning to see a pattern. We're beginning to see, hey, there's something to this. There's something more going on.
Yeah.
And so, rising from that, we started the World of Empowerment on 11-11-11. We'd been doing lots of work other than before that as well. But we found that we were able to help people come to an understanding of what their purpose in life was. And we were doing readings for people all over the world, Akashic Record readings. Aingeal Rose has been a reader of the Akashic Record for years and years and years. And she taught me to read the records. And now we do Akashic Record readings for people. And arising out of that, not only have we helped people to steer them into their soul contract, but also we've saved people millions of dollars. One particular client, we've saved them $25 million. Another person, we've saved them $3 million. And anyway, it goes on.
Tell me how. Yeah. Tell me how, like, in what context were you able to do that? Like,
Well, this particular client was in a lawsuit, and he would call for an Akashic Record reading. So we would just look into the records on how this was going to turn out. In fact, he was getting pressured to settle and pay X amount of dollars, And the records clearly said to him, do not pay another penny, Just hold your own, stand your ground. And he did. And because he did, it turned out in his favor. So it was just
that's
little
amazing.
stuff like that,
Yeah. Yeah. You guys talk about intuition, awareness, these readings, and most people listening would say, and I know we talked about this, I feel stuck.
Yeah.
Or what do you say to someone that says that? Like what do you believe is actually going on underneath that?
Well, we always go into their records first and we look at their soul contract, first of all.
Okay.
And we see what's going on with their soul contract. And then it turns out as they start talking that they end up giving you a lot of evidence about why things are working and how they are being guided to certain places and things.
I see.
So they may think they're stuck, but if they take a look at what they're actually saying and the patterns, it turns out that they are being guided. They just haven't wanted to listen to it. Okay?
Yeah. And we see that as a gift. There's a gift in all of these things. Like in the tragedy of Aingeal Rose, the tragedies we mentioned, she was able to find what the gift was in that. And in my case, I could not see a gift in having a baby die. Absolutely no way. But had he not died, I would not be here now. I would not be with Aingeal Rose now. My life would not have unfolded the way it did. And I'll give you a perfect example of that, because when I mentioned that we met in Phoenix, I went to Aingeal Rose and I asked her advice, knowing she was a wise, angelic being. I said to her,
You just met me.
But I asked her because I was very confused, seriously.
Yeah.
And I asked her and she said, do you not realize that every soul that's born has its own purpose and its own intention? Whereas I had been looking as me being the owner of my child, that I was the one responsible for everything that happened. So therefore, in some obscure, guilty way, I was the one responsible for his death just the same. And what I realized was that, yes, everybody has their own divine purpose. And when we find what that is, then everything opens up. Everything really blossoms.
That is a lot to carry. Oh my gosh. So you talk about soul contract. Can you give our listeners a little insight to what that is?
Yeah, that's before you're born into this world. You make a decision with your spirit on what you would like to accomplish while you're here, okay? Or what your gifts are. So it's like a pre-arrangement before you're born on what you'd like to accomplish. So when you look at somebody's soul contract, you can see their gifts. You can see what they're actually meant to do, and you can talk to them about that. Now, you don't have to fulfill your soul contract. You have free choice. Just knowing that gives you an opportunity to take a look at what's available anyway, okay?
Yeah.
And some people, sometimes it's somebody who just needs to paint, be an artist. And other times it's somebody who needs to work with children, or somebody else who needs to learn about forgiveness. And on it goes. It could be anything, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've a perfect example of that. Just sorry for cutting across you. Just by way of a
please.
beautiful example, there's a guy who lives in Phoenix who contacted us, and he, in his reading, Aingeal Rose said to him that you need to be helping other people with your knowledge. You need to be channeling this information through a podcast and through a website and through YouTube videos and so on. Well, it turns out that he became Cultivate, Elevate, and he's been helping people all over the world. And I mean that, like Japan, China, all over the Orient, all over Europe, all over the United States, with helping people grow their own food from an awareness of the energy that's involved in it. And
well, the main message for him was he needed to go study the crop circles, which to me made no sense at all. Like, why would they tell somebody to go study the crop circles? But when he did, he learned about ley lines and energy lines, and he learned about the energy of the earth and the electronics of growing food and all that. So they kind of led him into where he
Okay,
so
let me take you back. You said crab circles, like CRAB.
No, crop, CROP.
Crop circles. Okay, CROP, crop circles. Tell us what that is.
Okay, well, they've been coming down for a while, but basically they're patterns that appear on the earth in like tall grass or grains, and they're usually a geometric pattern of some sort. And they don't really know where they come from. Some believe they come up from the earth, beings of the earth, and some people believe they're ETs that distribute them, but they're actually patterns in fields, and they're quite beautiful.
See.
Yeah, they're mostly in England right now.
Yeah, but they've been found in desert areas too, in the sand.
Found in ice too.
And they've been found in ice, but mostly in the area of Canterbury and close enough to Stonehenge, round about that area of the United Kingdom.
Okay.
But if anybody was to search for crop circles, CROP, crop circles, you will be inundated with the amount of information. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let me ask you guys this. There's a fine line, right, between awareness and avoidance. And we were just talking about that a little bit. So I want to ask this direct. How do you know if you're actually growing or just spiritually bypassing what's difficult? Like you're just sort of like pretending it doesn't really exist. You know what I mean?
Okay. Let me answer that one.
You answer it first.
And I'll answer it too by of reflecting back on something we were telling you earlier about saving people money.
Okay.
So there was another client of ours, and this time I do a lot of what I call spirit art. In other words, I see images and I can paint them as they relate to a person. With this particular lady, she said to me, "I've just lost $3 million, she said. And when I looked at her, I could see in her energy field the avoidance, but I could see it by way of, there was a pair of hands like this, right? And there was money falling out of her hands, just flowing out of her hands like that, coins. Okay. And that's what I painted. I painted the hands like this, money falling out. And I said, that's what's going on in your life. And the solution to it was simple, Lisa. I said, take this picture home and put it in your kitchen or your bedroom, but turn it the other way up so that the hands are like this and the money is falling into your hands, right? And that's exactly what she did. Simple picture. She just turned it this way up. About 3 months later, she called and she said, "You're not going to believe this, but I have recovered every single penny." Now, in terms of your question about avoidance, really, she was taking the loss and embodying the loss and avoiding the real issue that was going on. In similar ways that I was taking the loss of my son and embodying it and thinking that I am guilty and it's a tragedy and it's a desperate loss and there will never be any recovery. So instead, turning it around, turning the avoidance around into seeing what the gift is. And the gift was accept. And it worked in a material sense, in the outward 3D sense. It worked, and it always works every time.
Yeah.
A lot of
Every
times
time.
too, when you're in the records, Lisa, you can see somebody's, if they have a past life that's connected to a present event, you can see what the past life is and what has not been learned so far. Okay, and you can talk to them about that. And so people connect to that. I mean, if you hit a past life or a relationship with one of their parents, for example, they know right away. Okay, and they can see how that's created blockages in their life in some way. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing when they ask a health question. When you look in there, you can see, what is the cause of the health? Is it something emotional now? Is it a past life memory that hasn't been cleared? What is it, basically? So when you talk about, like, we just read a young girl who's actually, she's moving because she can't afford her place anymore, right? And this poor girl is going through such resistance and grief about leaving the place that she's in, even though she's not happy there, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, but we've talked to her about the resistance. She's really just afraid that her future will not be good. But so you just have to talk to them about that this is a new opportunity and you get to start over and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So she's called a few times and we just have to re-encourage her, you know. And actually, when you listen to her talk, the universe has been supporting her by bringing people who've gifted her with thousands of dollars. Somebody else found a new trailer for her to buy, and she could afford it. Even the place where she's going to move the trailer, the guy came down on the rent land. So it turned out, when she was talking, that she's been gifted a whole lot of signs from the universe in terms of gifts and encouragement. And she only had one friend who told her that she was making a mistake. And that one friend blew her mind. I mean, she was focusing on that, you know. Oh, I'm going to be a failure because this one said this. And so you have to, like, re-talk them out of their own fears sometimes.
That's so good. Now, can you share with me, give me a visual or an explanation? What does a reading look like when somebody comes to you and they're in a turmoil or they're having, you know, a time? I call it the messy middle, you know. We usually have multiples of those throughout our lives. But when they're there and they want a reading, what is needed for that reading? Like, could you guys read me right here on this podcast? Or would I need to bring some things? Would I need to be in a certain headspace? What does that look like for both you guys and your person you're reading?
Yeah, well, basically, there's a special prayer we say to get into the records first.
Okay.
And we use the vibration of their name because your name holds the frequency of you.
Okay.
And then we just say the prayer and we get the records open. And usually we'll see something brief initially. And then we have them ask questions. And so it just kind of continues from there. You know,
I love that.
Yeah.
And
we
if
don't
people wanted
really
to
do them
read-
online, though, to be honest. Okay.
Yeah, they have to be in person.
No.
Yeah. No.
No.
I mean, we don't do them on podcasts, is what I meant to say.
Yeah, we don't do them. It's a sacred. It's a sacred thing, really. It's
Sure,
not
it's got to be a private.
Yeah.
I got you. But you can do it remotely. It just
Oh,
needs to
yes.
be in private.
Oh, we've read people all over the world, and
That's amazing.
not only that, but Aingeal Rose also was touching on something really important when she was talking about the frequency of the person's name. You know how sometimes especially with women, if they get married, they'll change their last name, right? I've often wondered about that. Even before I was aware of frequencies or Akashic Records or anything, I was thinking, wow, that really changes a person's resonance. It changes their whole impression of themselves, actually, and their impression to the world when they take on a different name. Little did I know that what we were talking about was frequency. And so when we tune into somebody like that, you're tuning into their Akashic Record from the frequency of their name. And that's also why I, unknowing and inadvertently, changed Aingeal's name from Gail Ann to Aingeal. I didn't know it at the time, but the frequency of Aingeal is far more closer to who she really is. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's interesting to look at that kind of thing. And many people too, who we know as well, would just voluntarily change their name by deed poll or whatever, because they feel this guidance to up their frequency somehow. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Do you guys find, what I've noticed is, especially with our audience, there's a lot of people who are always searching. And I know I am one of these people. I don't think it ever ends for me, but I'm always searching. I feel like I'm never satisfied. And I know a lot of our listeners feel the same. But in many cases, many of them are not moving forward. They're constantly searching, but they're not moving forward. Whether it's job or marriage, or maybe it's a big life decision. You were just talking about that young lady. She was struggling to move forward. What's an example of what somebody could do different? And you may have just shared this with me with the hands, the money here, and then turning the hands, the opposite way. So it's receiving the money rather than losing the money. But is there different examples of what someone could do differently if they feel like they're not moving forward?
Well, I think they first have to look at what is their fear of moving forward first, or what does moving forward mean to them?
Okay.
Because when you ask those sort of questions, you kind of get in touch with what does your subconscious really believe about that,
Yeah.
But usually there's some sort of fear around it or some sort of worry.
Well, tell them about your journaling and how that helps to unravel what that fear is.
Yeah. I taught journaling classes years ago when I could see. I can't see very well anymore, okay? But I realized that everything you go through has an association to it. In other words, if somebody feels blocked, you could have them sit down with pen and paper and ask themselves, what does blocked mean to them? Because we make an association with everything. Whatever conclusion we come to, we have an association with it. So by writing down what blocked means to them, they end up putting out a lot of things that they didn't realize about themselves, okay? And it could be different for each person. Like blockage for somebody might mean something different for somebody else, okay?
I see.
But you have to take a look at what is their association to the word or condition that they're going through.
And that condition could be, what does poverty mean to me? What does war mean to me? What does fear mean to me?
What does moving forward mean to me?
That's the key question. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because usually you find out there's some sort of fear around that or some sort of idea or belief around it. And it could be even an old religious belief they have,
Yeah.
But that starts to, when you journal like that, it starts to uncover. And I always say, use a pen and paper. Don't use the computer, okay? Because there's something about the act of physically writing that starts to open up your subconscious beliefs.
Yeah. I agree with you on
and
that.
You know how, Lisa, I mentioned a while ago that luckily I was journaling after the death of my child, but I did not know what I was doing at the time. All I knew was it was helping me to write out what I was feeling, and especially for a man, because I wasn't able to talk to anybody about it, So the first time I brought Aingeal Rose to Ireland, and we were in the attic of my house, and I showed her, she was looking through this journal, and she said, you have to publish this. Like, I was so embarrassed about it all at the time, very personal stuff. I'm saying, there's no way I'm going. Anyway, she persuaded me to publish it. And it turned out to be a 3-part book. And the first book in that series is Why Did He Die? And the second one is The Reincarnation of Columbus. Talk about coincidences, because he was born on the day Columbus discovered America, 500 years to the day before. And then, so the 3 books became the Healing from Grief series. Now, when I said to you earlier on about look to the gift that's in this, I was able to turn that sadness and that grief into something that has helped a lot of people around the world just from reading those books.
And it was very hard. It's a very heartbreaking story when you read it. You can't help but be totally moved, because he wrote down everything, every little detail of the event. And when I read it, I just couldn't believe it, that somebody would go through that much pain,
And something else, when you talked about taking a blockage and trying to turn it around, it turns out that by me publishing that book and publishing Aingeal Rose's first book, we became publishers. We've published over 1,000 books now.
I saw that. It's amazing.
It's the strangest thing how out of adversity can come some beautiful things, really, when you work with it in that way.
Yeah.
Especially now. Now we seem to be going through, people are mostly going through a lot of confusion. People who call they're confused. It's the word they use, I'm confused. Oh. And I kind of made the connection to the astronauts going by the dark side of the moon, Mm-hmm. And I said, it looks like everybody's shadow's coming up. Well, it turned out that mine came up the other day because I was just lying in bed, and all of a sudden I said a prayer to the Holy Spirit for some reason, and all of a sudden I got these memories of my partner who killed himself. I mean, in detail. I was going through a movie of the whole event, everything, and it lasted and it lasted and it lasted, and I thought, why am I revisiting all this,
Yeah.
And it was just, I realized that I still held a lot of grief in my chest, because I've been telling Ahonu lately it's hard for me to breathe. And all of a sudden I made the connection the other day that I'm still holding grief. But I think it was connected to the fact that the dark side of the moon is being exposed. And that's the shadow, the collective consciousness of the shadow,
Yeah.
So that's interesting how you can revisit things suddenly,
Yeah. By the universe.
Yeah.
So as this progresses, is it something that will help you kind of flush this out?
Yeah.
Or do you feel like it'll just kind of go back in until the next round of shadowing?
No, I think it's asking me to re-feel everything. And I talked to Ahonu. When you're hesitant to talk to your current partner about something that happened with a past relationship.
Sure.
But thankfully, he's very patient and understanding, and he let me just talk about it. But I told him I should probably write about it at some point if I could write again. But right now, because I can't see, I can't write anymore. But but it's a matter of letting yourself feel them and releasing it,
Yes. And let me ask you this in that regard. What is one kind of real decision that if someone's feeling this, going through something like that, what is a decision someone could make, maybe even this week, that could help them push forward or process through it? How do you recommend someone go through that?
Well, for me, I realized that there was a lot I hadn't forgiven, and a lot I hadn't forgiven about myself in that situation too. Okay. And so I realized a big deal for me was to be able to forgive myself. And so I think that's a major part of what's going on today too, is forgiveness. Yeah.
For sure. I agree with that so much.
Yeah, there's another little part to that too. And it's one of the reasons why we started the World of Empowerment, is because our whole societal structure is all about disempowerment on one level or another. Starting from school, even before school, it's all about being kept down, being squashed, being
told what to
do, and to fall into the authority trap.
Obey.
That everybody is in authority over you, and that you have no power. And that is all so wrong. And that's all so changing so fast these days. And more people are coming into realizing that they do indeed have power. Now, one of the ways that we find that easiest to explain actually is because a lot of people come to us with relationship issues. And I remember the first time doing a reading with Aingeal Rose, and this woman was talking about how she couldn't leave her husband because she loved him, but he was abusive. And he was mentally abusive, physically abusive, emotionally abusive. But he was her husband, so she was going to put up with it. And she went into that trap of forgiving all the time. Now, you tell that story, Aingeal Rose, because I'm going to have to excuse myself because I've got apple pie in the oven and the alarm is going off. So you bear with me. But you tell the story about saying no.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big lesson that I had to learn too, because I was married to a man who was abusive emotionally, not physically, but mentally and emotionally. And he was that way to my children as well. And because I was into the Course in Miracles at the time, I kept saying, well, if I just keep forgiving him, he'll shift, okay? And it turns out he didn't shift. In fact, whenever I would do that, I'd come back from the park or something and he'd do something extra mean, till finally I heard Jesus say, don't you get it? The answer is no. So all of a sudden I said, okay. So I wanted a divorce after that. And of course, he freaked out at that stage and started drinking and all sorts. By then I was done, when you're just done.
Yeah.
And
Jesus said, no more.
Yeah, no more. So did it come out good?
How about that?
Well, that looks wonderful.
Beautiful.
Listen, if you're listening to this podcast, that is the beautiful apple pie. Just take my word for it.
Anyway.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you heard Jesus say, that's it. You made the decision.
Don't you get it? The answer is no. And so I tell people that when I'm
Mhm.
doing a reading and they're in an abusive situation, that there's no excuse
Yeah,
for abuse. And that can be a
that's
big
right.
lesson to say no. No matter
Yeah,
what your religious beliefs are or what your marriage beliefs are, it's never okay to be abused. Okay?
so true.
And as it
It's
turned out,
yeah.
years later, the same man has apologized to all of my children. He hasn't
Oh,
apologized to me, but he's apologized to all my children for being not such a great dad, you know?
yeah,
And they're all very close now. So, and
yeah.
then, yeah,
Well,
besides that, Source told me that I had to bless him every day. And I remember thinking, you got to be kidding me, right? Bless
yeah,
this guy who is a number one a-hole, you know?
yeah,
But
yeah.
I sat with it for about a week and I said, okay. And whenever I
Mhm.
thought about him, whenever I thought about anything mean he did, I would just stop myself and I'd say, I bless you. And I'd leave it at
Yeah.
that, okay?
Yep.
Well, as it turned out, he found a partner who was more at his level. She compliments him really well. So I'd say he's grown from that, you know, because of her. And
Which is so good because a lot of times that doesn't happen, you know?
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that had a good ending, I guess, or story, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where can people find you? So I know you can all over the world, you can do readings. They can find you. Tell us your website. That's also where they can find your books, which are, I'm assuming, are available on your website, but also Amazon and all the places you can
Yeah.
find books. Tell us more. Where can people reach out?
Well, the best place is worldofempowerment.com, worldofempowerment.com. And in there, they'll find courses that we do. For example, how to read the Akashic Records if somebody wants to learn to read the Akashic Records themselves. Aingeal Rose has been teaching tarot for years, so we have a course in there how to learn to read the tarot. She has a beginner's tarot course and books, and she has advanced tarot books and course as well.
Spreads.
Yeah, tarot. And
Okay.
along with that, then we have all the other books that we've written as well. They're all available. But like that, if you were to search online for Ahonu, Ahonu, or Aingeal Rose, Aingeal Rose, you'll find
Yeah.
Google has us listed there with books and courses and workshops and websites and so on. And if you wanted to book a reading, you'll find the link on worldofempowerment.com. You'll also find it on aingealrose.com. But if you were to do a search for Aingeal Rose or Ahonu, you will find those links as well
Find all of those things.
on all of
Wonderful.
those things. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I also wrote a book on manifesting, which teaches you how to journal the way I described earlier.
Which I love. I love that because when I think of journaling, and I know there's a lot of people that are with me on this, like it seems exhaustive to me to journal. You know, I mean, especially in today's world, and that's not a good thing. I don't say that lightly, but to just sit, I can sit in quiet and not do anything or just read a book or just be calm, no phone, no nothing. I've learned to do that. And that I had to teach myself to do. It was not easily, you know, it wasn't just an easy thing to do. But the journaling piece of it, sometimes I sit down. I think it would be wonderful to learn to journal because I know for many of us, we sit down and we don't even know what to write or where to begin.
Yeah.
Or how to, you know, how to put our thoughts from here in our head onto a piece of paper that is going to be beneficial, where you're not just writing, you're doing something that's cathartic and actually going to help you evolve.
You put your finger on it there, Lisa, because a lot of people consider journaling to be just a record of what they've done. You know, I went to the store today and I bought bananas and, you know, whereas what we're talking about here is writing something like, for example, I feel sad. But then Aingeal Rose kicks in with that key question, what does sad mean to me? And then it starts to open up and flow.
Yeah, you always have to ask yourself what the situation means to you.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, okay? I remember journaling about a backache I had once, and I asked myself, what does backache mean to me? Well, that revealed a whole bunch of stuff that was going on in my life where I didn't feel supported or able to get up and do things, you know? And as soon as I saw that, the backache disappeared, okay?
Okay.
So you can do that.
So I want to yeah, go ahead.
I'm just saying you can do that with anything, but just start with whatever it is you're feeling, okay?
So let me ask you, on the website, they can find this. Can they purchase a book that gives them these questions as they go
it's called
through?
The Book of Manifesting.
The Book of Manifesting. Wonderful.
It's got
All
how
right,
to
you
do
guys
that.
heard it here. Yeah.
Yeah.
in there. Yeah.
Yes. Because Ahonu, I think you're exactly right. Is that people just, I went to the store today. I bought bananas. I put gas in my car, picked up my kids. I had to make dinner. It's almost like an account of their steps throughout the day. And that's what people think of when they think of journaling. So I love this idea for sure.
Yeah.
And listeners, go get that book. All right. Go find Journal Better, Be Better. Get better. I love that. Now let me ask you, we've reached kind of the part in our podcast where we do a quick, we call it the 60-second drawer dash, where I just throw some questions at you and you give me your first rapid response, right? It doesn't have to be rapid. We can take our time, but you just offer me your first response. Is that okay? It's about 5 questions.
Go ahead.
You feel good? Okay. All right. Let's jump in. So, what's one belief that you've outgrown?
The fact that I'm guilty.
Okay.
Yeah, that I would say the same thing, in total agreement with that.
Love it. And a moment you didn't trust yourself and you learned from it.
When I was going to marry Ahonu.
Okay. Ahonu, did you know that?
Listen, I had the same thing. We were in Connecticut at the time, and
Yeah.
it was snowing. It was like 6 foot of snow outside the balcony.
Oh my gosh.
And I was going
Of
to
course
jump
it was.
off the balcony into the snowdrift and make a run for it. And I'll tell you something, I am so glad I didn't. But that was a moment of doubt, and
Right.
oh gosh, yeah.
I can't believe you both had that, where you didn't trust yourself and you leaned in. And I'm so glad you did, because I'm so grateful to have you guys here today. So what's a daily grounding practice for each of you?
The daily grounding practice. Okay.
Oh, while you're
I
thinking
don't
of
really
that one,
know, do you?
yeah, I have a little one.
Going out and sitting on my porch in
Yeah,
my
tell me.
rocking chair.
I touch my sternum right here, just to remind myself that my heart is very, very powerful. And I don't mean just as a physical pump. I mean as a source, an energetic source of love. And just by touching my heart, it's like as if it pulls me right back and grounds me. Yeah.
I have to go out and sit on the deck in my rocking chair and talk to spirit.
Love it. I love it. So I just want to review those because those are so impactful and unique, right? Touch your sternum to remind you that your heart is not just a strong pump for your body, but also a place of love and grounding. And then for you, Aingeal, to sit on the back porch in quiet and be able to talk to your spirit.
Right.
Love that. What is something people overcomplicate about awakening?
They think they have to be perfect.
Ah, that's so true. Yes.
And you don't have to be perfect. You can just be as you are at the moment, in the moment.
That's a super question, because it opens up so much about the authority problem that we all face, that we talked about earlier. For example, in A Course in Miracles, it says, you are as God created you. Now, if that's the case, I mean, that's either true or it's not true. And if that's the case, then there is no need for all this falseness and this lack of courage and lack of belief and guilt and torturing ourselves and punishing ourselves. If we are as God created us, then we are divine beings, and that is it.
Yeah,
and I wish people would recognize that.
Yeah.
And that's the big lesson in the Course is remember that you are as God created you. When you're not a body, you're a spirit who's using a body right now. And to only choose love, because Source is only love. And I think that's another big thing people need to realize. There's no judging God up there. There's nobody pointing their finger at you and saying, you're doing this wrong. You need to do this the other way. Okay, there's just love.
There's just love. And I love that you say this, because it takes me back to what you said earlier. Because I think, I don't think we're born with all this mistrust about ourselves and who we are. I think that comes over time of, we learn, to your point of authority, growing up and being under that thumb. We learn those behaviors, we learn those things, and they do kind of, they sort of instigate that small feeling, or that not good enough feeling, or that constant questioning about who we are, It's more of a learned mindset, unfortunately.
I also think a lot of it has to do with your birth, because how your mother's carrying you and how you're born has a lot to do with what beliefs you come in with. And that can just happen, like for example, my mother,
give me an
she
example.
wasn't happy she was pregnant with me, right? And so throughout my life, she always would say to me, I never wanted you, she'd say.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, and you can think of the effects of that would be that I'd always be rejected, I wouldn't be accepted, and that pattern would go on and on until I decided to change it. But that's another thing that you have to kind of take a look at too, is the birth trauma that you could have gone through.
So true. Oh my gosh, that is such a terrible but great example,
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you went through that, but it's like if a parent leaves or you didn't have a parent. My dad and mom divorced when I was 2, so I always felt this, and my dad never made the effort to come see me, so I carried that, like that abandonment sort of, I'm not good enough, he didn't want me storyline in my life, and what that brings, the residual that comes from believing that or feeling that for so long is just so detrimental, or can be, until you, like you said, and like until you decide to overcome it and make those strides, All right, one last question for you guys. And I know you have thousands of books, and it's amazing. And it's probably one of those books, but is there any other book out there that changed the way you think?
I have one that comes to mind straight away. And I remember reading it when I was a child. As a Man Thinketh. Gosh, I've forgotten the author now. Was it Napoleon Hill?
I think so.
Possibly Napoleon Hill, yeah. As a Man
That's
Thinketh.
The name of the book is As a Man Thinketh.
Yes. And the very first line inside it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It always stood by me.
Can you expand on that? Yeah, can you expand on that for us just a little bit?
Well, basically, it's
saying what you think is what you experience.
What you think is, and what you embody, and what you experience.
Yeah. Yeah. An author or quote is coming to mind that's similar to that, and I can't think of it right off the top of my head, but I think it was actually maybe a sports coach that said, if you think you are, or no, maybe it was Henry Ford. If you think you are this way, you are that way.
Yeah.
If you think that, that's it, Yeah. So, okay. So what I'd love to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, is I would love for you to leave our listeners with one tiny dare, something simple that they can do, say in the next 24 hours, to reconnect themselves in a real grounded sort of way.
I'd say pick the biggest situation that you're having a hard time with in your life, and sit down with a pen and paper and ask yourself what it means to you. Let yourself journal about it. Because doing that is immediately transformative.
I can't think of anything better to suggest than exactly that.
Love it. Aingeal and Ahonu. I'm just going to make sure I say that right. I am so grateful for you guys to be here today. We will make sure all of this information is in the show notes for our listeners, and to make sure that they have a way to get to you and to find out maybe what their readings are at this point. Is there one last thing you want to leave our listeners with today?
Well, I'd like to compliment you on what you're doing, Lisa, because you are absolutely right when in naming your podcast, the Sock Drawer, it's like that's a beautiful metaphor for what we all do in our lives. And it can be messy, but there can be treasures in there just the same. So it's a beautiful thing you do. And I want to thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it, and allowing us to share where we're at and what we've done and what we've learned and how we help others too. So congratulations and thank you.
I'd like to just leave them with the fact that your answers are within you. Okay.
Your answers are within you.
Because even when you journal, your own subconscious starts to tell you what the root of something is. So you don't need anybody outside to do it for you. You can just ask yourself, because you're your own best authority.
Yes.
Thank you both so much. I am honored to have you both here, and I appreciate that you are willing to come on and share all of your journey with us, even the hard parts, and I appreciate it. So listen, listeners, if this episode made you pause, and I can't imagine it didn't in so many ways, if it made you question something or notice something that you've been ignoring, well, that's your starting point. You don't need more information, need anything else. You need one honest decision. And if it resonated with you, please do me a favor, share it with somebody who needs it. That is how we pay it forward. And that is what will help them. And until next time, open the drawer, face what's inside, and take that one brave step forward. Thank you both for being here. We'll see you next time
Thank
on
you
the
for
Sock
having
Drawer
us.
Podcast.
Bye,
Thank you,
Lisa.
Lisa.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Every week we come here and open the drawer. You already know what's inside. You always have. And if this conversation challenged you in a good way, and you think it will help challenge someone else who needs it, send it to them, because that's how we pay it forward together. Subscribe and follow so you never miss what's coming next. And find us at thesockdrawerpodcast.com.